Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits. Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, Misfits, and welcome back to a new episode. Today, we are starting a new series.
A new series.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're starting a new series. So, we are piggybacking off of our places you should know.
Right.
And we really hope you took something from those episodes. If you thought of a place that we didn't talk about, we do suggest that you please let us know.
Yeah,
so
feel
we can
free.
Talk about it for you.
Because there's a lot of places in the Bible.
Yeah.
So if there's a place you're like, hey, you didn't talk about this, we'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, the more random, the better.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like in the Bible, there's a place called Tekoa. I bet you didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's random.
And I don't know how much information there is, but we're willing to go into it and
Even
look
if
for
it's
it.
just the meaning of the name.
Yeah.
That's a good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A mini episode, if you will.
Exactly. It's an appetizer.
Yeah.
But we're piggybacking off of the places you should know, and we're talking about people you should know.
People you should know.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is what we're going into. That is our new thing. So we're going to pivot from places to people. So there are a lot of people and names that get mentioned in the Bible that can leave us asking, like, who
are these? Who was this person?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can be applied to the places too.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like,
what is
where
this
are
place?
they? It's like, oh, it's the same place. Why does it have different
Yeah,
names?
why are there all these different names?
Yes.
Because, yeah. Just because.
Exactly, because, yeah.
Because people name places different things.
Yes, please refer to the previous series.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm biased.
I mean, we enjoyed them, so
Yes,
I hope you did
yes.
too.
But sometimes we have more information when it comes to these people. Sometimes we really don't.
Yeah, so we try to
it's
do
not
our
that
best.
People are trying to
Keep anything from us?
yeah, keep anything from us, or there's like secrets that the Bible has and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. It's like, no, there literally is no more information.
Right, just
Yeah.
depends on how much they're spoken about in the Bible and just how much context was given.
Yes,
You
and
know?
if Josephus, our favorite historian, that wrote at the same time that the Bible was being written or was being lived out, if he wrote about it,
If he
then we have
also
more
included some,
information.
then
Yeah.
thanks.
Exactly.
We have a little more
Josephus
context.
Is coming clutch. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, no.
For the validity
He
of
really
the Bible,
is.
it was
Yeah.
great. If you don't know who that is, we might do an episode on that.
Yeah, maybe
he's
we will.
not in the Bible, but he's an important part.
Yeah,
of
history
the
and
timeline of
Bible
the
history
and, stuff.
and what's happening in the Gospels and all this stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a whole tangent. But today we are coming to.
But
you.
it's people you should
Exactly.
know.
It is
So
just people you should know.
you know.
Yeah, Google Josephus.
Yeah.
So today we're coming to you with a person mentioned several times, but maybe you thought to yourself, "I'll look him up later."
Right.
And
like
then you
Josephus.
never did. Yeah, exactly, like Josephus.
I know that's what's gonna happen, but that's okay.
Exactly. But maybe you literally never did, because I've done that several
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
Like, oh, I need to look that up, and I don't. Mm-hmm. So we're here to talk about him, and the person that we're going to talk about today is Nicodemus.
Yes.
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 Yes. He has a great name.
He does.
He does. It's fun to say.
It is fun to say.
It is fun
it's
to
like
say.
rolls off the tongue.
Exactly. It is very fun to say, and Yadi's going to tell us what his name means.
So his name in the Greek means victory of the people. So very
That's
cool.
nice.
Very interesting. Like, sounds powerful.
It does.
Yeah.
In the context of who we know him to be.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, very
That
cool.
is very interesting. But maybe that'll make more sense as we continue through this episode.
Yes.
Because we had to look up his name last minute because we forgot to see what it means.
But y'all don't know that.
Exactly.
We knew it all along.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to talk about Nicodemus. And we know what his name means now, so we're just powering through. So
Yeah.
if you read the Gospels, you should recognize his name. If you watch The Chosen, you should also recognize his name.
Yeah.
Or you would know fictitiously what he looks like, and
Right.
also what his story is in the Bible, or in the Gospel specifically. Maybe you chose this episode because you thought it was an interesting title.
Yeah.
I hope you did.
Yeah. We like his name, so maybe you saw the name and you're like, yeah, that sounds cool.
Exactly. So here we go. We're going to learn about Nicodemus today. So the Bible mentions Nicodemus in the Gospels, specifically in the Gospel of John. He's introduced as a religious leader known as a Pharisee. Mm-hmm. The Pharisees were a group of Jews who were very particular in keeping the letter of the law, to the extent that they added their own intricacies to the law that was given initially to Moses.
Right.
They created their own loopholes for themselves because they understood the law, and at the same time added burdens to others. So because they understood the law, I think they were able to create certain, like I said, loopholes to be able to kind of do what they wanted to an extent.
Right.
Because they're like, well, I understand the law, so I know how to manipulate it. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, because the people at the time didn't have a Bible, right? It was read to
Right,
by people at the temple and stuff
like
that
him,
in the synagogues, like the Pharisees and the scribes and all these other people. Then for those people, the Pharisees, the rules that they added for themselves were burdens to others, because it's like they created loopholes for themselves and then problems for everybody else.
Right. So they added on to the people, and then in some ways they kind of found ways for them to like find the loopholes around it.
Yeah. Which is, it's kind of crazy to think about. It made me think, like, when I was saying it made me think of lawyers. Like, not, like, good lawyers. Some are sneaky people and like to do it.
And they know how to write up a contract.
Because,
and for you and me, we might read it and be like, I don't know how to get out of this. Right. But they know the loopholes.
Exactly. So that was interesting. That was a good parallel.
Yeah.
Thank you, Holy Spirit. So in the New Testament, these Pharisees, these men, were very legalistic, and because of this way of thinking and living, they of course clashed with Jesus,
right?
Who, as we know, came to fulfill the law, but the way that he did it was completely opposite of what some of the Pharisees were expecting.
Right. And again, it's like what they expected. It wasn't that he was doing something that he shouldn't be.
Right.
But the Pharisees had a very like specific way they thought that the Messiah was going to come. And so Jesus didn't fit that. And so they clashed with him a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they created a mold for a person that they
like an expectation
knew was coming, but they didn't know how they were coming. And it's like, oh yeah. Yeah. That one right there, that's not it.
Yeah, no. That's not who we think should be. It's like, but what does the word of God say? Well, I think it's something else.
Yeah,
and it's
crazy.
like, yeah.
And I noticed that too. Like I've been reading John recently, and when Jesus talks to the Pharisees and he speaks about the law, he says your law to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't say the law, he says your law.
Because he understands that it's the add-ons and the nuances, not necessarily the word. Crazy. I know those things you added. Yeah.
Exactly. Those are the things I'm talking about.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's crazy. So it's not surprising that Nicodemus also had questions for Jesus because, like we said, he's also a Pharisee.
Right.
So there are 3 significant mentions of Nicodemus that say a lot about him. And mind you, these are the only 3 instances that we see this man's name in the entire text.
Right. But it gives a lot of context to who he was. So.
Yes. So his first conversation, or the first instance, is a conversation with Jesus. So because Nicodemus was a Pharisee, he had this conversation in secret, since having this conversation in public with Jesus would cause a lot of trouble for him.
Right.
Because at the time, the Pharisees were actually, everyone was trying to trap Jesus, but the Pharisees specifically were trying to either kill Jesus or imprison Jesus. So if Nicodemus had openly entertained, like quote unquote, entertained Jesus, he would have been seen as a traitor. To his like sect or whatever.
Yeah, because they're seeing Jesus as contrary to, again, what they expected and what they quote unquote believed. And so if Nicodemus wanted to talk to him, even if it was like out of curiosity or something, they would have just viewed it as, oh, you're taking his side or you're like kind of folding to maybe what he's saying, just a lot of like negativity.
Yeah, and he would have lost everything because from what I've seen of the Pharisees, and not to say this is every Pharisee, because I'm like Nicodemus and other Pharisees did believe in Jesus, but they seem real cutthroat.
Yeah.
They seem real like,
very black and white.
If you just do one thing, it's like you're cut off, and then God knows what.
Even if everything else in your life you're doing right, if we see you do one thing wrong, you're out or we're shun you or whatever. Yeah,
they sound like Mean Girls.
Very much so.
So this encounter that we're talking about where Nicodemus speaks to Jesus is in John 3 verses 1 through 2, and all of these verses are going to be in the NLT. The Bible says, there was a man named Nicodemus, a Jewish religious leader who was a Pharisee. After dark one evening, he came to speak with Jesus. Rabbi, he said, we all know that God has sent you to teach us. Your miraculous signs are evidence that God is with you. That's great.
So, yeah. And it's interesting because he does acknowledge who Jesus is, even though it's in secret, but still, like you see that there's at least that curiosity and that kind of acknowledgement of Jesus as a teacher,
Yes, and of course we see more of this conversation, and we're going to let you read that for yourself. And we see Nicodemus just being very confused and trying to understand Jesus' higher ways, which would have happened to any of us. It's like, oh, you have to be born again. And he's like, I'm old. How am I going to be born again? Like, what does this even mean? But anyway, this is the first encounter that we see Nicodemus in the Bible.
Right. And his kind of curiosity, like, what are you saying? So the second one mention of Nicodemus is when they first attempt to arrest Jesus. and they weren't able to actually do it. So Nicodemus speaks up to try to give Jesus a chance to give his side of the story. And this is kind of one of those instances where it was in public, right? And he kind of tries to get on his side. And this is found in John 7, verses 43 to 52. It says, "So the crowd was divided about him. Some even wanted him arrested, but no one laid a hand on him. When the temple guards returned without having arrested Jesus, the leading priests and Pharisees demanded, 'Why didn't you bring him in?' 'We have never heard anyone speak like this,' the guards responded. 'Have you been led astray too?' the Pharisees mocked. 'Is there a single one of us rulers or Pharisees who believes in him? This foolish crowd follows him, but they are ignorant of the law. God's curse is on them.' Then Nicodemus, the leader who had met with Jesus earlier, spoke up. 'Is it legal to convict a man before he is given a hearing?' he asked. They replied, 'Are you from Galilee too? Search the scriptures and see for yourself. No prophet ever comes from Galilee.'" So again, he's just trying to bring up a very regular thing, right? He's not necessarily taking Jesus' side, but he's just trying to bring awareness. And right away, they already what are you trying to say? Or what are you trying to do? When he really didn't really say anything. He's not saying anything for Jesus. He's just kind of trying to bring an awareness of are we being fair? Can we do this?
Right.
But you already see their pushback. They're already kind of...
I'm sure they were very skeptical.
Right, right.
Because they were thought, because of who they thought they were and their own righteousness.
Right.
And they thought they were holy and blameless.
Right.
They're like, we know the Torah back and forth and we do all of these things. And they seem to think that they're pure in their own eyes.
Right.
And so...
they're the ones who are in the right and fulfilling the law.
Anytime anyone like Jesus, or even... because I was reading this book and it said that... because of course Jesus is the Messiah. But at the time before Jesus, there were many men that were pretending to be the Messiah. But
right, they claim to be.
Yes, and Nicodemus would have never said that of anybody else.
Right.
So the fact that he's saying that about Jesus, but they think the same thing about Jesus that they thought about every other person, is whoa, red flag.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
We've had several of these instances.
You've never
and
said
you're,
that before.
Yeah, and you're speaking up now about him.
So
why is this different?
Yeah.
Which, of course, there was something different. But the other Pharisees didn't quite see it because they lumped him with all the rest. Yeah. So to them, it was what are you saying? Why are you bringing this up right now? So, yeah.
It's just interesting. The familiarity, right? Because they had the familiarity with the text, which is dangerous. Because you're like, oh, I know what this says. It's like, right. Do you? And
if it didn't fit that, then it was out, which was what happened with Jesus, right? You don't fit these things that we think the Messiah is going to be, so you're out. And so they were blinded basically by their own thoughts or beliefs or additional laws or whatever it was.
Yeah. And then it's the familiarity with the text, but also the familiarity with all these pretend messiahs. And it's oh, well, that one was fake, that one was fake, that one was fake, this one's fake
because it fits 1, 2, and 3, and it's
crazy.
But there's so much more. Yeah, but we've seen enough.
Oh my gosh, that makes me hesitant of when God is doing something, it's oh, he did it this last time, he would do it this again.
Yeah, and we're such people of habit, right? Yes, creatures of habit, that we think God's gonna be cookie cutter or every the same
time. Right.
And we're always surprised, right? But we shouldn't be, because that's how God works. But yeah, that can happen to us too. We get into these routines where we think God's gonna answer in the same way, or because he did it with someone else, he's gonna do it with us, or last time, so this time. And we can fall into that kind of same monotony. But yeah, that can happen. That's what did happen.
Gotta be careful, folks.
So that's the other instance with Nicodemus. And then the third mention of him is after Jesus' crucifixion. So we see Nicodemus helping Joseph of Arimathea, which maybe we'll talk about. He might be another one. Wink, wink, keep in mind. But yeah, we see him mentioned after that, and that's in John 19, verses 38 and 39. It says, "Afterward, Joseph of Arimathea, who had been a secret disciple of Jesus because he feared the Jewish leaders, asked Pilate for permission to take down Jesus' body. When Pilate gave permission, Joseph came and took the body away. With him came Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus at night. He brought about 75 pounds of perfume ointments made from myrrh and aloes." So here again, we see that although Nicodemus wasn't an open follower, we don't necessarily see that specifically, an open follower of Jesus, he was maybe torn between who he was and who he wanted to become. But here we see, in the end, he stepped out, right? He was public about this, and he took care of Jesus, his body, after the crucifixion, which was a really big deal, because no one, right? Like they crucified him because they wanted him dead. Right. So like for him to step up and step in and take care of his body was him acknowledging him as a person, as who he came, like recognizing his death. And so that took a lot of courage, and the Bible doesn't tell us what happens after that, but we know, like, just from other people who also were involved with Jesus, like, you know, the kind of like backlash that they got for stuff like this. Yeah.
Right, because at this point Jesus was like enemy of the state.
Yeah.
Number one.
Basically.
But also, if you remember our Golgotha episode, right? The Skull Hill. This was a very public place.
Yeah.
It was actually like a main road outside of the city.
Yes.
So when Nicodemus goes up to like help Joseph and the other ladies with his body,
right,
everyone saw him.
Yeah, there was people there,
like heckling and spitting and like doing all this
so
stuff.
There was a crowd because they wanted to witness the death.
So they saw
and
him.
Also, if you remember, there was others that were also being crucified. Yeah. So it wasn't just the people there to see Jesus. There were other people around as well, because other people had also died.
Yeah.
And so it was,
this is a very
public place. Yeah, exactly.
Public endeavor that Nicodemus did.
So he really took a step out of faith and you know, to participate in this. Yeah.
I didn't think about that before.
Yeah.
Because you think about the movies, and when they like pick up his body from the ground and stuff like that, it looks like no one's around except them taking care of his body and stuff. Yeah. But I'm sure it wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah. Definitely a lot more public than sometimes it's depicted. But yeah, we do see Nicodemus as a man who saw the light, but maybe didn't understand, right? Because that's why he had a meeting with Jesus initially. His past, current life, and traditions were making his vision foggy. Again, he was surrounded by this whole idea of like the Pharisee rules and just all that kind of stuff, the religious stuff. But he also knew that there was something about Jesus, and it was like, I don't fully understand who you are, but like, I know there's something different and something special about you. And we see this like the step out with him, you know, helping with his body afterwards. So we do learn 3 significant things from Nicodemus. The first is the conversation between Nicodemus and Jesus helps us understand the concept of being born again or born of the Spirit. It highlights the spiritual transformation that is central to Christian faith and salvation. So that was a very important part of their conversation that Jesus shared with him, right? And so that's where we hear it about being born again. 2, Nicodemus represents a Pharisee who, despite his initial caution, was open to considering what Jesus had to say. And so this shows us people's diverse responses to Jesus during his ministry. And it went from, you know, curiosity to opposition.
Right. That was like the big range.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm curious. Yes, I believe. I hate you.
Yeah.
Like,
I totally
so
do not agree
emotions.
with anything that you're saying. Sure. Yeah. But I think you see this with the other Pharisees, but he was definitely more open to like what Jesus had to say.
Yeah.
So that was interesting because you do see how all the others, you know, react to Jesus. And then the third thing is Nicodemus's later involvement in the burial of Jesus shows us a shift in his relationship with Jesus from a secret conversation to a more public association. So this shift could be seen as an act of faith and commitment to Jesus now after his death. So whether Nicodemus thought Jesus would be resurrected or not, we don't really know, right? The scripture doesn't tell us, but we also don't know what happened to Nicodemus after Jesus was resurrected and ascended, but we can hope that he was fully converted and dedicated his life to spreading the gospel. Again, we don't know for sure, but this just the step that he made at the end, or the last part where we hear about him, really speaks a lot about what could have been, you know, in his life and what he could have decided to do. And obviously he decided to show faith and that he was behind Jesus, you know, in his ministry. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think so Nicodemus is painted as a disciple of Jesus who had not yet mustered the courage to declare his faith openly until Jesus died. And we see him acting differently, right? Like you said, we see him acting differently after Jesus died. After like finishing this episode, I'm like, I never thought about what happened to Nicodemus, right? But like as we broke it down, it's like, wait, what happened? Like, was he saved? Was he not saved? Like, did he take it back? Yeah, did he like keep the rest of his life? Was he like Paul?
Yeah.
He just doesn't have his own book in the Bible, so we don't know. Like, what happened to Nicodemus? That should be the name of the episode. What happened to Nicodemus? But I'm so curious to know what happened after he took that huge public faith of like, I'm going to help these people. Because we know that Salome was there. the Marys were there, and then Joseph of Arimathea is there, and then he's there. And so all of these people, like especially the women, they're already associated with Jesus.
Yes, they've already been following him.
Even if he didn't believe, or even if he wasn't saved, or even if he wasn't fully on board with Jesus, the fact that he helped them, he was automatically a part of them, right? Because remember when Jesus tells Peter, hey, you're gonna deny me 3 times before the rooster crows and all this stuff, the people kept coming to him, hey, you're one of them, hey, you're this person, or you're this person,
and he's like, nah,
get away from me, woman. No, I'm not. And,
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was the same situation. Like even him helping them in this moment, and he wanted to disassociate them forever. He couldn't.
Right. It was a very like public and
like,
obvious step.
You're the Pharisee that helped that Jesus. Like it would have just continued to happen.
Yeah.
So this
and
was
just
like
and just being like a Pharisee and being like higher up in that kind of organization, like that meant a lot too. Like it took a lot for him to do that because he was a leader between amongst them,
and prestige and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a big step for him.
Yeah, I'm sure that if his wife wasn't saved, she was pissed.
Yeah.
You did what?
Like, I was one of the ones yelling to crucify him, and you're over here helping with his body.
Because you told me to. He's like, that was 3 weeks ago, though. I've changed.
Have you not seen me in prayer?
Oh my gosh. So yeah,
but we don't know what happened to him.
We need to know what happened to Nicodemus. So hopefully we get to find out when we meet him at the pearly gates.
Yeah.
And
have a little chat.
Nicodemus, what happened?
Yeah, what happened? What'd you do after?
Everyone has somebody in the Bible that they want to talk to. Some people want to talk to Ruth. Some people want to talk to Paul. Some people want to know who the author of Hebrews is. Right. That's really bothering them. They don't know.
Like it's good. Who are you?
Wasn't on my list, but he's on my top.
Yeah, I was gonna
top 3.
I was gonna say I was like, I feel like our list gets longer as we discover more, and we're like, hey, I want to know his story now. I want to know what happened to you.
Hey, Nico, what's up?
What
happened?
So what'd you do after that? And how'd you what happened in that moment? Like, were you already planning to, or was this like a spur, like in the moment, the spirit like pushed you to do it? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, like Nicodemus, I know these 3 things. Fill in the gaps.
What happened from this one to this one, and then this one to this one, and then after?
Yeah. Did you sleep that night you spoke to Jesus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. But yeah, that's Nicodemus, man. Yeah. That's what we know. That's what we see in the Bible. Hopefully now you're as curious as we are to find out more about Nicodemus. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope you learned something about Nicodemus today. Yeah. And as always, this is Fran.
This is Yadi.
We are the Midtown Misfits, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.